At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
I'm going to say it'll do 22.
All right.
Think you're out of your mind.
Mr. Movie Biz himself, Richard Rushfield.
I am rooting for the industry,
Exactly.
Richard. That's how I'm going to frame it.
Okay, I mean, I can root and say we'll get 100 million, but...
Welcome to the Ankler Podcast. It's Thursday, February 27th, and a sunny 80 degrees here in Los Angeles. I'm Elaine Lowe, author of the Series Business newsletter, and today we'll chat with our newest member of the Series Business team, Leslie Goldberg, about her chat with CBS Entertainment President Amy Reisenbach and just how much pilot season has evolved over the years. But as always, right here, right now, I'm with the Ankler himself, Richard Rushfield, and from New York, author of the Wake Up newsletter, Sean McNulty, who was all over the Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery earnings this week, which is why I'm in the hosting chair. But we also have the Oscars coming up this weekend. And Richard, I literally heard just this morning, I didn't realize it, you're going to be at the Oscars. Have you got your tux pressed yet?
He wouldn't miss it, Mr. Oscar.
got my tux rental is being pressed for me and let out a bit, so...
Do you really rent a tux every year? You don't have just your one?
Yeah, because every year I say, well, it's cheaper to buy one, but I'm never gonna be wearing a tux again after this. So,
but you literally wear one every year.
Every year until next year.
But
what do you mean?
This is the last year I'll be going. So I don't.
Do you know something about the Oscars, Richard? We should know about? Will there not be a show next year?
It's a lovely thing to go to the Oscars, and I'm honored to be asked.
What about the WWE invites, Richard? Come on, I mean, you have plenty of things for the tux,
exactly.
Your round
I know
calendar.
you were there ringside. I was surprised you weren't in a tux then.
I'll just start wearing a tux to the podcast now.
Yeah,
so.
Listen.
There you go.
Class this place up.
We have a video component, Richard. I think you must.
Yeah, we're on YouTube now, so yeah, exactly.
Forgive my casualness. So the tux rental shop, when I asked him about that, about when people buy, and he says, well, the real reason people rent instead of buy is because
size fluctuations.
People's size tends to grow a bit, so they don't. I understand.
Well, now with Ozempic, it goes the other way, so it could be shrinking too. It could be need to take it in. So Richard,
this is the year.
This is the year, Richard. Yeah, exactly. This is the year, Richard.
Go back to my college tux. Well,
break out the high school prom, everybody. Here we go. Yeah.
Okay, I know you and Katie have talked about this a lot, and obviously anybody who wants to know anything Oscars should be listening to Katie Rich's Prestige Junkie podcast. But I do
who actually knows what she's talking about. Unlike me. So.
Well, what you do know, what you're talking about, is the menu, and I gotta know what is the food and drink situation at the Oscars every year.
At the so there's tiers there. Well, the short answer is there is no food at the Oscars. There's none, except
the Golden Globes is like a full-on dinner situation. The Oscars is like theater seating, right?
Star.
Jimmy Kimmel in his last outing did this thing where he put goodie bags, Jimmy Kimmel, under everybody's seat that had I think a little sandwich in them or something. And,
I vaguely recall this.
And popcorn and a snack, which was actually enormously appreciated when you're sitting there for 5 hours and all that. But down at the bar where the reporters congregate and hang out, there's also no food. But they have some trail mix things they give out sometimes.
Are you allowed to sneak in your own food? Will anyone take it away from you if you stuff your pockets full of Skittles?
I'm lucky I can get the tuxedo buttoned up as it is.
There's no room for food.
Not a lot of storage space there. So
Richard orders in a pizza every year. He just orders Domino's every year. They know where to bring it to. Yeah,
I should. But then there's the Governor's Ball by Wolfgang Puck, which is right when the Oscars get out. It's right outside there. It's 10 feet away. So you walk straight into the governor's ball, and there are lavish buffets, and most especially, there's kind of a dessert wing of the governor's ball.
Oh, we know where to find you, Richard.
It's not even a dessert table. It's like 6 dessert tables.
It's like when people have like a walk-in closet just for their bags.
Richard's equivalent, Elaine.
Whatever I may say about the Oscars at any time, or how I feel about it, or who's nominated, what happens, the desserts at the governor's ball are not to be underestimated.
Okay,
all right.
This is good to know.
Do not take lightly the post-Oscar dessert situation.
Oh, well, we look forward to the full report from the Oscars after this weekend, Richard.
Absolutely.
All right, so Sean, one of the great delights of doing what I do now at Series Business is that while I cover the business, I do not have to listen to every single earnings call
out.
every single quarter as I used to do back when
Yes.
I covered the market and had to wake up at the crack of dawn.
You think Sean's doing this because he has to?
I think Sean is the kind of guy who like listens to an investor call in his downtime. I don't know.
Yeah, I guarantee that is the case. That if the entire trade sector went away, he would still be dialing into earnings
Yeah,
calls.
I think Sean is vacationing on a sandy beach somewhere and calling in to be like, what is Bob Iger saying today?
Yeah, there is an investor conference next week, and I will be away, Elaine. So we'll see if that's the real test. If I click into the investor conferences next week, so I'll report back on that. That'd be interesting.
All right,
so,
we're gonna start taking
see.
bets.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
today,
Place your
this
bets.
week, we have Paramount Global, we have Warner Brothers Discovery. I know there was a period of time where we were like, when is Paramount even going to report its earnings as it prepares to close this $8 billion deal with Skydance? But what's the takeaway here?
Lo and behold, Paramount, it feels a little bit, obviously, biding time. The deal timeline is still by end of June. That hasn't really changed too much. So we still have essentially 4 months to go here, Elaine. So, it's funny when the office of the CEO first kind of took control last summer and started taking over these calls. And one of the first things, when they're out there like, we're looking at partnerships, we're looking at deals, like, we're having conversations about reshaping the company. Like now, like they were asked and it was just like, we're talking to, it was not the forefront of anybody's message. So not a lot of things like on the, hey, we're reshaping the company. Because look, new people are coming in. Like it's not even that, shocking to hear, Lynn, I'm sure. But, the streaming losses are better. They're still losing money on it. The company as a whole lost money in the quarter from a net loss point of view. But the one thing about Paramount that you can say is that, because again, the big question and the larger question in our industry is viewership shifts from linear TV to streaming. Is the money following? And they have a net of 2024. They had made a positive $441 million on the year between advertising and affiliate and subscription revenue was
so it's
was
going
net,
in the
net
right
positive.
direction.
So that's a positive. We're at Warner Brothers Discovery that is not, and other companies. So that is a positive. But the theory is working out. They've had a couple of years, obviously a lot of big change, a lot of write-offs, a lot of layoffs. It's not like this was an easy thing, but are the decisions paying off? In the theory, it's not a lot of money, Elaine, but at least it's not a negative where like, okay, you're recapturing these dollars that have left linear TV and are now in streaming and, kind of making a go of it. So
they're on a positive trajectory, at least at this stage of the game.
In that sense, in a theoretical sense, yes. But on a money-making sense, no. So that would be, so it depends on your metric.
All right. But yeah, speaking of Warner Brothers Discovery, I mean, what's going on there? They've forecasted, it sounds like, more declines on the cable sub side and the linear ad market's also still declining, but they have added a lot of number of subs, 6.4 million streaming subs in the fourth quarter of the year for a total of 117 million subs total now.
That's globally, and that's also Max and Discovery Plus. But yeah, I mean, they've had two great quarters. They had 7 million in Q3, Elaine. And I will say Q4 was the quarter where Charter added Max for free to their subscribers. So certainly that was a big part of that was in December. So that was likely a big part of that number growth. But growth is growth. For 2 years there, Elaine, Max or the streaming numbers were stagnant or falling. So for them to have added, that kind of number in 2 quarters there was definitely an achievement. It's just the language on the call, Elaine, was really, back to listening to the call, right? Like, I mean, there's you've heard many a call. Sometimes this sounds desperation. Sometimes it sounds, it can be, we have a strategy, we have a plan, we have confidence. You can kind of read that stuff, Elaine. And this was the first call I'll put it in the WBD's, existence since 2022, where it's like, all right, they're no longer saying things like, hey, we have the biggest share in cable, where it's like, like they're not touting these things that are not the future of the business. Like they acknowledge, the advertising, they're like, yeah, wasn't a great quarter. CNN essentially under-delivered. The presidential election money did not come in there. They're not trying to be like a used car salesman, trying to sell up, kind of like, oh, used car salesman talk of like, oh, wait, no, it's really this. When everybody else is like, no, bro, it's not. And the stock was up about 10% today on the call.
Yeah, it got a good pop during the trading session today. I mean, 10% is a significant amount for them.
On a Hollywood studio call, yeah, and the numbers weren't that great. Like, there's still, the revenue was down. I mean, the overall, a lot of numbers here that were not in the positive direction in 2024. Revenue didn't increase. There was no profit. They wrote off the billions of dollars this summer from the cable network. So that was a huge hole. They haven't made a profit since 2022, 2023, 24. No profit there. Internal profitability, EBITDA also decreased. So there's some negative numbers here, but Wall Street is just acknowledging that, okay, you're not talking about the business like you're not in it anymore, what the future is. And they also were talking about sports, Elaine. This is the biggest thing that stood out here.
Sports. It was Zaz himself, right, that said, quote, we don't need any more sports anywhere in the world in order to support our business, which is quite an interesting position for their direction, especially when you consider that streamers like Netflix are getting more into sports, like their $5 billion deal with the WWE. You look at what's like Max. Max also has wrestling and a bunch of, well, actually, Max does have wrestling and a bunch of things, but I mean, they're not, but they're not really like digging in as much as some of their competitors are. Yeah,
and this is, again, the change in language. I mean, obviously, they lost the NBA deals, all the talk last year, and that obviously, they kind of, we're gussying that up about how it was, a benefit, and they're kind of dancing around that a bit when they, maybe lost the deal, call it what you will, but time will tell. Venue was the hot topic as well, and now this was in response to an analyst question, Elaine. This wasn't part of the prepared comments, but it was, it was just literally like point blank, like, we are investing in IP and in TV and movies. This is what we do. And he said that line about sports, where they're happy with their portfolio, which is not large, which is now after the NBA leaves in a couple of months.
Yeah, what do they have left?
Major League Baseball and March Madness are essentially the two main properties. They have the French Open, of course, which you'll be watching.
Didn't they have hockey?
And hockey is on there as well, yeah. But MLB is probably the bigger one out of that. So they're happy with that. And the things with the French Open, some college football playoff games, they got from ESPN, and they are happy with that. They're not, because the UFC is open, Elaine. Major League Baseball just left ESPN, so that package will be open next year. So that was kind of the question, will you be bidding on this stuff? And they're like, no, we're not, they're essentially, we're happy with this. And again, why is that? They brought back the old Netflix line, Elaine, we want things that we can own and not rent. And they're kind of coming in, whether that's by necessity or default, it is what it is. That's, I think, what Wall Street was happy to kind of hear, is like, they're not going to compete in that. They don't have the broadcast network, Elaine. They're a cable company. And they also have 2 years of data, Elaine. They've been streaming NHL and NBA games on Max that are also on TNT for 2 years. They know the size of that streaming audience and kind of what they can support financially. And the cable bundle is, again, the greatest business model of all time, and streaming is not. The math is different.
So presumably quite an informed decision here that they're making around
They're not
sports.
going to a blind, exactly. So that you can kind of infer from that. They didn't say that on the call, Elaine, but that's also something to infer there. And again, we will see. It's a long business, Elaine. People kind of decried WBD last year for losing the NBA, but maybe people overpaid for it. We will find out next year when we start seeing Peacock and Amazon numbers and things like that. So, but I will say, Richard, we're going to tie it back here to reading the tea leaves here. And Elaine, you've been on many of these calls. We noted the Bob Iger 2.5 minute opening comments on Disney. NBCU was also pretty brief in their comments this year.
A lot of brief opening remarks this quarter.
And Zaslav was a tight 4, Elaine, tight 4 minutes there.
Tight 4.
No CFO comments. It was 4 minutes of tight Zaz and on to Q&A. So again, and they're not, again, Paramount was asked about.
It's all fallen into place.
It's a little bit of, I said Paramount was asked about partnerships and didn't have much to say. So either something's going on or, read it as you will, but it's unusual.
Maybe they're just busy and they don't have time to think about murders.
They were busy washing their hair.
It's like,
well, the thing is, we see a 10% pop on the stock from Warner Brothers today. And, you were saying Wall Street is liking what it's seeing, Sean. But Richard, as you well know, sometimes what Wall Street likes isn't what Hollywood likes, isn't what the creative community likes. Like when in your discussions around town, Richard, what have you been hearing about Warner's this year? Like, what's your impression of the community's take on how things are going?
I mean, everyone's just waiting to see what's going to happen here. I think everyone's taking a deep breath and you're just like looking ahead, like assuming there's some consolidation. It's like, how does Warner's compete for projects with that if they are, a tenth the size of these other places? And it's you can always find stuff to fill the place, but it's what is it going to be? And You've just got these huge question marks for everybody of what is the model? What is the way forward after the cable bundle? We talk about theatrical films like it's its own thing, and that's the be all and end all. And first of all, it's for all these companies, it's a small part of the sliver.
Right. And it's not in isolation, and it doesn't have the same weight as it used to 20, 30 years ago.
Well, and even that piece of the pie is basically supported by the second windows and all that. So if the number of buyers shrinks, what happens to that?
Yeah, I mean, think of cable TV, Richard. It's, you sell it to FX, you sell it to TNT, and not just that, the international networks that, you sell it to Germany, you sell it to, all these linear networks, and if they start disappearing, that's a part of the, if your movie bombs, that's how you make your money back, Richard. And if those aren't there anymore, and there's 5 streaming buyers, and that's it, globally, that changes the math there, right?
Yeah. And less buyers means lower bids. Like, I don't know if half as many buyers means that they pay half as much, but it certainly means a lot fewer bidding wars when you have a few people. And, it's just the consolidation is coming. I feel it in everything. And the results of that, it's not going to be, hey, we put these companies together so we can spend more now.
Right, exactly. And the word cost efficiency, cost reductions were, again, mentioned as very peripherally in the Paramount calling, coming in second half of the year, again, once the leadership changes there.
And I mean, that's everybody too, though, right? I mean, like, whether you're going through a merger or not, I mean.
Well, Paramount is for sure.
Yes.
I mean, exactly where Warner's is kind of still. We'll see. Maybe there's more ahead, but a large amount happened this year. Shows
and films, they're fungible assets. So if the pool is smaller, then the prices are smaller for everybody, and it all goes around. There's not going to be someone sitting there anymore saying, oh, well, everyone else may be paying $10 for this, but we're going to pay $40 just to show you we love you. That day is past. So everything will have a price, and the price of everything will likely be a lot lower after this.
Well, going back to the Oscars, and I say this because I just noticed, Richard, that you dropped a couple of pictures, Oscar-related pictures in the group chat here, which I want to get back around to. But how much do Oscars and having those awards matter to these companies anymore when we're sort of talking about directionally speaking where these companies are going and like how important it is in the landscape of things?
Well, it matters in 2 ways. First of all, the most important thing for any business is not their EBITDA or their chart or anything. It is what the person in charge of that business wants to tell people that he meets, that what he's doing and what he wants to say at dinner parties that he's up to. And when very rich people think about their lives, and they can do a lot of things with their lives. They can go into pharmaceuticals, petroleum. They can just run investment portfolios. When they come to this neighborhood, which traditionally is the worst investment in all of,
but the most glamorous investment, the
most glamorous, and which is why everybody is here. And at the top of that pyramid of glamour sits the Oscars, and since sits the Oscar, the red carpet, and making a speech, and maybe you see yourself accepting a speech or see yourself being thanked by a glamorous actor and a room full of the most beautiful, glamorous people in the world looking to you and adoring you and wanting to talk to you. And that is the big pull of it. So there are things in this world that cannot be taught in a business school textbook, and that is one of them. And that pull, and if you don't think Tim Cook and Jeff Bezos and Ted Sarandos
aren't all similarly drawn in to the pull of this.
If you don't think that they have lay in bed thinking about that at night, then you do not understand the psychology of these folks. So that's on one hand. Second hand is for what remains of the indie market or of smaller films, not giant tentpoles, you're trying to break them out and you're trying to get them attention and you're trying to find some way to market them. And the Oscar train is that's the biggest train in town for this type of movie. So you want to be a part of it. For companies like we talked about this with Netflix, it's a fight for talent because you have, how many A-list talent do you have? 30 or something? It's a finite pool. There's not 100 A-list stars and they have limited schedules. They only make, maybe 2 or 3 movies a year. They are very much what moves the needle, whether you're talking theatrical or cable or anything. Having an A-list star versus not having an A-list star, or having a couple B-list stars or whatever versus not having B-list stars is a huge thing. And of the things that you can offer those stars, you can offer them money, first of all. That's very important. You can offer them like a great script, but to be doing something that has a shot at our awards, just like as it's a big motivator for Jeff Bezos, it's a big motivator for Ariana Grande too.
Who is pictured here? Where is this picture from, Richard? When we sort of talk about the Oscars, we're also talking about this huge flurry, a whole cottage industry here that supports LA, which is incredibly important at this time when work is scarce. But okay, I'm looking at a bunch of red seats and Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo and Cecily Strong next to them? I can't tell who that is, but where is this and where were you?
So Elaine is looking at the group picture or my picture taken while the group picture was being taken of the Oscars nominee. They have every year they have a dinner. They usually have a lunch actually, but it was canceled because of the fire. So this year they had a dinner for all the Oscar nominees and they take the group picture. And I was
you were present for the class photo here.
Privileged to attend the class photo and see them, which I got to say is I wrote about in my newsletter today. I certainly mocked the Oscar trail plenty, and there's plenty to mock there. But
you mock something, Richard?
But you get together and you see all these people. I talked to someone who made a documentary short, who is a listener to this podcast. So if you're listening today, go get them. We're rooting for you. A songwriter, talk to a costumer. There are so many talented people in that photo, in that room, who have done so much good work. It's just a sliver of all the people who have done good work in Hollywood in the last year. But just to acknowledge like all these people and all they bring to it, which is the center of what makes Hollywood, much more than the EBITDA or anything. It is the strength of the talent and expertise of our craftspeople. It's very inspiring.
Yeah. And how many of the events, how many of them have been converted into sort of like charity things or were canceled in lieu of donating? Because I know there's been kind of a robust debate about this, right? About like canceling an Oscar event, pre-event, in order to donate to the wildfire relief efforts. But also, again, this is a cottage industry which supports hundreds and thousands of people during this time of year.
Yeah, I think the debate kind of sorted itself out on the side of do the events and say that you're making a contribution to something or other. At the Oscars, they're very sensitive about this, so they had a press conference of the producers, and the first thing they said was this is going to be about L.A., and they said that at the night also it's going to be about L.A. They want to really push it. It's going to be they're going to be a tribute to filming in LA and showing all the things that are filmed here as part of the show. And they're coming in hard with that as their answer to the fire people.
Interesting. Well, we'll see what the ratings are. Sean, any early predictions for Oscars ratings?
Oh man. It's the Wicked crowd. I think that's really where we're hanging our hat on the Wicked folks showing up. As much as, the Honora stands are out there, that's kind of the big ones. So Conan O'Brien's hosting and he's been doing the circuit there, Lane. Seems guys, he'll probably have some fun ideas to make it entertaining. Keep Richard laughing at the bar there with all the other reporters. But boy, also, Elaine, we have Hulu this year. We have streaming this year.
Oh, we do?
So, yes, we are.
That's good to know.
And we are entering this 2025, Elaine. The Oscars have hit streaming. Look out, America. So, it's funny I was thinking about this because, at the Super Bowl, Tubi had such a big number I mean, it was like 13 million, which is, I mean, for streaming, it was like, maybe if it was on Peacock, it was like 2 or something, 4 or something like that. But that's a free service, right? So, but Disney doesn't have a fast service, but I'm like, it would be interesting because ABC is free. I mean, in theory, I don't pay for it. I don't an antenna, and it would be interesting if they put on a fast service, what it would do for the numbers. They're not. But Hulu's great. It has, 56 million or 55 million subscribers in the US. But that was my thought of like, would it be, if you really want to take this thing up a notch, why not put it on, on a Pluto or Tubi or something like that? But
so what's the early guess? You think it'll do better or worse than last year?
Yeah. So with the Hulu number, if they release the Hulu number, which we don't know if they will or will not, movies, I'll be a little optimist. I'm gonna go up. I'll go up this year. I think the Wicked people will show up. I think they want to see the Ariana.
Same. I think between Wicked and Conan O'Brien.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. He's not Jimmy Kimmel; it's a newer host. So Conan's never hosted before, so obviously maybe some factor there. And he's a digital creator, right? So maybe he has a big audience.
Yeah, I listened to his podcast.
What was the number last year?
So we had 19.5 million last year. That's a 4-year high. So I'll take the over 20. I'll go over 20 on that. Sure, put me in the over 20 category. Richard, what do you think?
I'm going to say significantly under 20.
Richard, you have to stream it on Hulu on your phone to count as a viewer, all right? Because you're not counted.
You say last year was a 4-year high. That was on the strength of the Barbenheimer.
Yeah, that's true.
And I see us reverting to the mean of the last years here.
All
so
right.
I'm going to say 16.5.
All right, Richard the realist.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Realist or contrarian, depending on how you look at it.
The Globes were down slightly.
Globes are about the same. Yeah, the Grammys were down a little bit, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So that's probably the bigger comp. But
I love Conan. Conan's great. He's not a giant draw like a movie star.
I get the math there, Richard. I'm just being an optimist. Being 20.
Well, I'll be an ultra optimist. Okay, so last year the Live Plus same day numbers were 19.5 million viewers, and then the Live Plus 7 multi-platform were 21 mil. I'm going to say the Live Plus same day. I'm going to say it'll do 22.
I think you're out of your mind.
Mr. Movie Biz himself, Richard Rushfield.
I am rooting for the industry,
exactly.
Richard. That's how I'm going to frame it.
Okay, I mean, I can root and say it'll get 100 million, but
Richard loves to win. That's what he does.
You're asking my prediction.
It's the cutthroat, competition. I know.
So 16, 20, and 22.
I don't see anything in this year's race
that gives you optimism.
That breaks it from the mean.
Okay. All right.
Fair.
All right.
Right,
I will say that the movie theater business is doing itself a bunch of favors. There's no big theatrical release to take away from the crowd. So people will not be going to the movie theaters as much this weekend instead of going to watching the Oscar show. So they cleared the decks there, ladies. Oscars, that's it. One thing only this weekend, the Oscars. So that's it.
And I've already been to a movie theater twice this year.
Still blowing my mind. But yes, exactly.
Which I think means I'm done seeing movies for several months now. I don't know, unless there's another great children's movie that's. Oh wait, the Minecraft movie. I'll be in theaters for that.
April. That's pretty good.
April, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, going back to Paramount, guys, we're going to be talking about its crown jewel with Leslie Goldberg. So when we get back from the break, we'll have a robust discussion about that and all of her thoughts on pilot season, year-round development, and the state of the many, many, many spin-offs and IP that you can find on broadcast and, well, pretty much just about everywhere these days. All right. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, Fidelity. What's it cost to invest with the Fidelity app?
Start with as little as $1 with no account fees or trade commissions on U.S. stocks and ETFs.
That's music to my ears.
I can only talk.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Zero account fees apply to retail brokerage accounts only. Sell order assessment fee not included. A limited number of ETFs are subject to a transaction-based service fee of $100. See full list at fidelity.com/commissions. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
Hi, I'm Eric Barmack, and I'm a working producer, and I write the Real AI newsletter for The Ankler. Real AI is your destination to understand the truth about AI and entertainment, who's using it, how they're using it, and the technological change already here in the industry. I care about AI because it's changed the way I run my own business and even pitch and sell shows. I've used AI for script coverage, to help my team brainstorm concepts, and even to come up with pitch decks. Real AI will also tell you more about the fast-moving technology that studios and streamers are tracking and how that will impact your job both today and tomorrow. I believe being informed is the only way to face the new frontier right here at our doorstep, which I believe can help foster the best in our human creativity, something that can never be replaced. Real AI comes out every other Tuesday as part of a paid subscription to The Ankler, so please join me by subscribing at theankler.com today.
Welcome back to the Ankler Podcast. Joining us now is our newest writer, Leslie Goldberg, also the newest member of the series business newsletter crew, alongside Minori Ravindran and I. Welcome to the team, Leslie.
Thanks so much for having me, Elaine. It's a pleasure to be part of the team and to be back on podcasting. I've missed it.
I know you're a podcast veteran, so you're going to fit right in here. So this week, you talked to CBS Entertainment president Amy Reisenbach about their programming slate, about the 8 scripted series they picked up for the 25-26 TV season. Now, CBS is like the granddaddy of broadcast networks. It's the old-timer who appeals to old-timers. But while it's not that sexy, it sure is successful, isn't it? It's basically the crown jewel of Paramount Global, which I think is saying something about a broadcast network in 2025.
Yeah, well put. I mean, it's the most reliable broadcast network on the planet, and it has been for a very, very long time. And that's because they know who their audience is, and we can, make jokes about them in the industry, and like, oh, only your, uncle and your mom watches this network. But, I'm out of the core demo now, and now I'm a Matlock viewer now that my mom moved in with us. So it's been interesting to say the least, because before this, the only real CBS programming that I historically watched, because I'm not a huge procedural fan, was Big Bang Theory and more recently Ghosts.
Well, yeah, Ghosts is a big one. I think you'll be surprised to find that there are a lot more Matlock fans at The Ankler than you might have thought. David Litsky, our executive editor, also a big Matlock fan.
Allison Brower, my editor here, big Matlock fan.
Yeah. And so we're also looking at a lot of spin-offs, though, at CBS. Obviously, they have the NCIS franchise, the FBI franchise. But you noted in your story that 4 out of 5 of CBS's rookie shows this season, Matlock, NCIS Origins, George and Mandy, and Watson, are spin-offs or IP. And this really feels in line with a trend that we've been seeing for a number of years now, right? The reliable, the spin-offs, the things that people know.
Yes, exactly. And now there's an additional layer of benefits to doing spinoffs, and historically networks and streamers love them because they're cheaper to market, meaning that you don't have to spend as much money on promotion and marketing as you would for a brand new show. And more important, they come with a built-in audience. So like if you're someone like me who grew up watching Grey's Anatomy, for example, just to jump to ABC, anything that's in the Grey's Anatomy verse, you're going to at least check out and sample, if not, completely dedicate yourself to watching. And the same is true for what CBS does. So anyone that can count on having a built-in audience, you're going to have an edge in development. And with CBS, what their strategy is now in 2025, amid the complete industry-wide belt tightening, there's another bonus to doing all of these spinoffs, and that's you have infrastructure, a built-in budget. And budget now is so important to get all of that stuff squared away.
It's all anyone can talk about. Can you get it in under budget? Are you a showrunner that can get it in under budget, right?
Exactly. And it's even delaying the green light process. I did a story on that recently as well. And it's when you're doing another NCIS show, this is a show that's been on the air for 2 decades and has given birth to multiple offshoots. And you know how long it takes to turn around an episode. You know what a per episode cost is. And with newer shows, you're not seeing the cost balloon the way that you are on like a flagship NCIS, right? Where you have cast members who have been there forever and they're getting big paydays because they're past their initial contracts and they know that they're on a huge hit. And more importantly, they're on a huge hit that plays and sells internationally. And in the streaming era, where everyone wants programming that can travel, when you have a tried and true franchise like an NCIS, you're going to keep doing offshoots of it.
Well, speaking of cast budgets and talent payroll, you also asked Amy Reisenbach about the salary reductions that certain casts of a number of scripted shows had to take. What did she say about how that factors into things?
It's Paramount, basically, and not to make a bad joke, CBS, Paramount, but it's hugely important because, like I just said, and this is something that Amy said in our interview as well, if you have a show budget that's ballooning, meaning a veteran show that gets more expensive over time, you're going to be less likely to stay on the air in 2025. So reducing your cast budgets is one surefire way to keep the show on the air. And if you remember, I think this was over a year ago, the cast of Blue Bloods took pay reductions in order to get the show renewed. And that's, 150 to 200 or 300 jobs?
Now, how common is that? That's not super common, though, right?
No, but it's becoming increasingly common in this landscape because, look, you've got eroding linear ratings as people continue to cut the cord in favor of streaming. And, again, when you have a show that's on the air for a long time, the budgets can completely get out of whack. And now COVID taught all these studios and streamers that they can cut back on budgets and what you really need to produce a show. And that was done out of safety concerns, right? This is before there was a vaccine and everyone was trying to limit the number of people that you had on set with exposure, et cetera. But now you know that you can make a show lean because COVID showed you that you can. So you're cutting back on people who are on set. It's very rare that you see writers go to set anymore. That's
Right.
something that a lot of people in that community are very upset about, and honestly,
Right. We heard a
should
lot
be.
about that during the strike.
Exactly, and that's still an issue that continues to be more and more common. But I'm getting off track here, and I kind of totally forgot where we were going. But the whole point of getting these cast reductions is making the show more affordable so it can stick around. And that's the larger goal that CBS wants. That's what anyone in the television industry wants, is to create a show, get the show on air, and have it stay on air. Most streaming shows are, 3-4 seasons if you're lucky.
Right. That seems like a real trade-off, though. I'm thinking especially if you're talent, right? Like if you're a performer, back in the day, the goal was, right, like get on a show that just keeps getting renewed, that's in syndication, and it's like it's a huge payday. The idea that you can be on a show now that goes 3-4 seasons and it's successful, and then you're asked to take a pay cut is a real reversal.
Yeah, but most of the shows that are, 2, 3, 4 seasons old, those are rarely the casts that are being impacted by these requests to reduce their salaries. And it's not just do the same work but get paid less. It's we're going to do fewer episodes with you in it. So your per episode guarantee drops, but at the same time, your salary is dropping. So you're not being asked to do more for less money. You're being asked to do less while you are being paid less. So it's, they're trying to at least keep it fair.
Yeah.
But
you're getting your hours cut, come in for a fewer shifts.
Yes, exactly. You're getting your hours cut, come in for fewer shifts. But the good news is that you're going to have a job for another season of television. And you're agreeing to take that pay reduction means that a couple hundred people are also going to keep their jobs as well.
Yeah, that's the trade-off in this age of austerity. You also pointed out that you have a great list of everything that's been ordered and renewed. And I noticed that the new shows ordered to series are also basically spinoffs or IP. You have Boston Blue, which is a Blue Blood spinoff, Sheriff Country, a Fire Country spinoff. I mean, is that sort of part of the plan when you were talking to Reisenbach, or is that happening organically? Like, I mean, it just seems like things are kind of weighted toward having spinoffs or IP, right?
Yeah, Reisenbach has been with the network since 2005 when she started as a director of current programming and was elevated. She started as president of entertainment in 2023, taking over for network stalwart Kelly Call. But I asked her if when she was tapped to become president of entertainment, if banking on more spinoffs and expanding that pipeline was part of the mandate. She said no, and that this season in particular, it's just a lot of these things they were developed and they just kind of became something that was ready to go at this stage. So I'm sure that they didn't want to, have Blue Bloods completely off the air before they did another spinoff, because one of the points that she made is if you can program a night, and we always talk in our industry about does scheduling matter in the era of DVRs and streaming.
The moment you said program a night, I was like,
right. It's like talking about pilot season. Yeah.
Like when you're a viewer, are you really thinking about like viewing in a night, anymore?
Right. But she made a good point, because now in our streaming era, we're all binge watching everything. Like I just started watching Pop Culture Jeopardy on Amazon. They release 3 episodes per week. I'm not historically a Jeopardy viewer, but I'm sitting there and binging 3 episodes of Pop Culture Jeopardy every week. And the strategy that Amy's doing, and you figure, look, if this is your mother that's watching the network, and I'm going to use my mom as an example, she's settling in for an entire night of programming. Right. And if you're already tuning in to Fire Country and there's a spinoff airing directly after that episode, you're going to keep watching. And that's the goal. They want people to continue to watch. And these programs are going to perform well on streaming. And the hope is that they'll be able to net a global audience once Paramount continues to grow on its streaming and get into more territories.
Now, I wanted to pick your brain about pilot season.
Yes.
You have seen pilot season go through so many iterations and gyrations, and it has changed so much, I imagine. Tell me what you've seen, and tell me how year-round development kind of still makes sense when you're likely to have so many spinoffs at a place like CBS?
Well, I mean, in a general sense, pilot season, we used to see, the industry as a whole used to see the 5 broadcast networks. At the highest, I want to say there were 95 pilots.
Oh, my God.
And this is probably as long as a decade ago. But I used to track every tiny little thing, from down to the minute castings of them, all the way to which studios sold the most and who had the most off-network sales, et cetera. And now you're at a point where just even saying pilot season, and this is what I said to Amy, you feel like a relic, because there is no pilot season. Back in the day when there were near 100 pilots going on, we were, as TV reporters, we were doing, there was one day I remember I wrote 17 stories in one day.
Oh, my God.
Pilot pickups, castings, etc. And you're just flying.
Props to you. Even from my time at the trades, I think my record was like 7 in a day. So 17 is a lot.
Yeah, but when they're casting stories, there's a formula, right? It's like, these things, you just bang them out. But, the more you do it, the easier it gets, right? Like any other skill. But now there is no more pilot season, because when you look at these networks, even just going back to before you're getting a pilot order, the development season, these networks each used to buy 300 scripts, 150 comedy and 150 drama. And think of all of the money that these networks were spending on that, and all of the waste.
Right.
And especially, even if you're making and you're producing 100 pilots, if you figure the cheapest broadcast show, and for like a CW show, $5 million an episode used to be high, right? Like that used to be considered high. So now on a CBS pilot is going to be more than that. And if you're making 20 or 30 of those, the amount of money that you're just literally burning to make episodes of television that will never see the light of day, because you're only going to pick up 2 or 3 or 5, it's completely wasteful.
Right. Doesn't make as much sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So the shift to year-round development is something that the broadcast networks really ripped a page out of what cable networks were doing. Because when you look at a USA network of a decade ago, their scripted roster, I think at one point was as many as 12 originals.
Wow. That was like peak Blue Skies USA.
Exactly. Peak Blue Skies. Well said. But the broadcast network, CBS, used to have 25 scripted shows on its schedule every season.
Man.
So when you're doing that, a lot of these people are realizing that the idea of writing, casting, producing an episode of television in a 2 or 3 month span, when you're fighting with other networks and cable networks and streaming services for the same talent and sound stages and directors, et cetera, it's just, you're not going to get the best results there. So the shift to year-round, A, it's more fiscally responsible, and B, it's just, you're going to get better programming because you're taking your time with it, right? Like think about the way FX develops shows. They'll announce something that's been picked up, and maybe 2 years later it's on the air. Like how many years have we been writing about Alien, right? That Noah Hawley show. 5 years, and it hasn't even premiered yet. But they're taking their time. And that's what you're seeing a lot of these broadcast companies do. And they want to take their time. They want to get the creative right because they want the show to stay on the air for a long, long time.
Well, thank you so much for all of your insights, Leslie. It's great to have an institutional voice here as part of the team, and I think we're going to have exciting times at Series Business.
I am so pumped. It's so nice to be back. Thanks, Elaine, for the warm welcome and for having me today.
All right. And thanks, everybody else, for listening. Make sure you're subscribing to our whole suite of newsletters at theankler.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Series Business, as well as Sean's The Wake Up newsletter, and, of course, the Ankler himself, Richard Rushfield. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Don't forget to follow us on our socials at The Ankler. And thanks so much to Leslie for joining us. We'll see you all next week.